Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit. Well, we made it all the way to Friday, largely without incident, which is fantastic news. Lots of people in the chat. Let's have a look. Dan Cullum's here just before the show started, saying, top of the morning, lads and ladies. It's Friday. It is Friday indeed. We've done very well. We've made it all this way. Jim Turner is here, and Jim is under the weather at the moment. Struck down in his prime by a nasty case of man flu. Get well soon, Jim, and get some weight back on. Can't have you wasting away over there. Mark Whiting's in the house, as is Alex Latham. Always good to see you gentlemen here. Good of you to join us. Thank you very much indeed for being here. And good morning to River Jim over on Instagram. Don't know who River Jim is, but glad to have you here. Before we get into the meat of today's show, I want to ask you a very quick question, because I want to know if I'm just being old and miserable. Went out last night to my local petrol station. I won't bore you with the reasons why I went to the petrol station, but I walked in, and it's one of those fancy new ones. You know, it's got the Wild Bean Cafe, so it's half petrol station, half Marks and Spencer's outlet. There was maybe a dozen of us in there. Walked up to join the queue, and the queue was, half of the shop, and there was just one person serving. And our 12 people became 13, became 14. And then suddenly and miraculously and without warning, a bunch of people emerged from out the back to start, doing their where were they? What were they doing? Do you remember? I mean, I've worked in shops between going from school to college. I used to work in a shop, and I was required to be stood behind the counter at all times. What, have they got a pool table out there? I genuinely don't know. As I say, maybe just be me being curmudgeonly, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't say it pissed me off, but it annoyed me that much that I came back and I wrote a story about it. You can see it there. It's the story is called "The Secret Lives of Petrol Attendants," because I don't know what they're doing out the back, and this isn't. I mean, I've obviously earmarked petrol station attendants, but it's not just them. I've got a local, one of these little co-op express shops. I've got one of those close by. There's usually a guy stacking shelves, nobody behind the counter whatsoever. And yeah, if if something goes wrong with the self-checkout or something, they all emerge. It's like they're afraid to go out in public. Shy, retiring types they are, apparently. Cheers, Duck. Losing weight is needed. Just not this way. No, you don't want to lose it by being ill. Not at all. Chris Ford is in the house as well. Morning, fat and well, fat and well, reporting for duty. Absolutely. You could be talking about yourself. I think you could well be talking about me as well. But good morning to you, Chris. Thank you for being here. Loads and loads to get through. Yesterday, I mentioned the fact that there was no news worth having. No news yesterday. Loads of news today, so I've got that to come. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. I'm just going to pick up on this because, Chris, you're absolutely right. Chris, Big Brother is watching you while you're shopping. I'm absolutely sure that's the case. What strikes me, though, is, as I say, I was part of a queue of maybe a dozen people and nothing. There was just one guy just slowly going about his business, nothing. So if we were being monitored, nobody out the back was going to do anything about it. And then all of a sudden, it was like 12 people, that's acceptable. 12 people in a queue is fine. 14 people in a queue, not acceptable. And in come the cavalry. What's that about? What are they actually doing out there? Are they literally just sat there watching TVs to make sure that we're not stealing stuff? Are they playing an illicit game of poker? Is there an orgy going on out the back? I mean, good luck to them if there is. Love to know what they're all up to. Anyway, all of that aside, it is Friday, the 17th of January, 2025. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, Hyundai's terrific trio. Should I say Hyundai's terrific trio? LiuGong takes to the road. John Deere's smart graders, well, graduated, and we're going behind the scenes with Prinoth. Plus, in my morning monologue today, I'm going to explain to you why you need to broaden your horizons in pursuit of the industry's next big thing. It will make perfect sense when we get there. Just very slightly jealous of Ken Hatcher, who's out having breakfast. It is Friday. He does do that on a Friday. What you having, Ken? Go on, make me jealous. Make me jealous. I hope there's black pudding and bubble and squeak involved in it, whatever the hell it is. Yes, before we get to all of the nonsense that I've just mentioned, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine to unravel, and it's another one that's been colour changed. Back after this. Yeah, just very quickly before we get into the mystery machine, Dan Cullen said learned a lot about asbestos last night. Yes, he's been on an asbestos course, I think, or either he's been or he's going on one and has been doing his homework, but he's been looking up all things related to asbestos. What's the expression I'm looking for? It's scary shit, isn't it, Dan? Yeah, whenever you actually see the stats on the number of people that have been killed over the course of the last 10, 20, 30 years, it's staggering that we're still sending people to work with something as toxic and as ultimately deadly as it is. But yeah, on the WhatsApp group yesterday, I suggested we might get Dr. Yvonne Waterman on to talk about all things asbestos. I think it would be a good reminder of exactly what it is we're up against. Gary Major has just joined us over on LinkedIn. Machine designer to the stars is out, Gary. Thank you very much indeed for your lengthy comment on my article yesterday about all things tech related, Gary. Much appreciated. And I have to say, I'll credit where credit is due. One of the things that Gary picked up, if you read the thing over on LinkedIn, it was me talking about the fact that machines have got a lot of tech that we're not necessarily using. He pointed me to an article that Nick Drew had written, our friend little Nick Drew over at Earth Movers, Diggerman blog and all of that kind of thing. And he was saying, obviously we are of a generation where we're looking at electric machines with a mix of fear, dread and trepidation. And he was saying the fact that the younger generation are quite used to battery management because they all put one of these around with them. They all carry one of them. Battery management, not such a big deal if you're a younger person. So thanks for that, Gary. Really appreciate your insight on that. Dan, back on the subject of asbestos, very bloody scary. More deaths are inedible. I'm thinking that it is inevitable. And good morning, Mr. Major. Long time no hear. Yeah, absolutely. Gary, always welcome in around these parts. Now, Mystery Machine. Here we are. That's what you've got to work with. It's got some tracks. That's not going to give you much of a clue, is it? So let me show you a little bit more. It's also got a bucket. I think that probably narrows down roughly the type of machine we're talking about. But I'll tell you now, when I expose more of this machine to the air, drag it, kicking and screaming into the light, it has been colour changed. So don't let the colour fool you. It's not its natural colour. A little bit like my wife's hair, but that's a whole other story. She's laid up in bed ill at the moment, so I can say what I damn well please. Let me take that away because we do need to crack on because we're going to be back. What have we got next? Oh, I know what we've got. I need to remind you of our question of the day, don't I? Like this. Yeah, time to ruffle some feathers, people. Question of the day today is this. Do you have a least favourite construction equipment manufacturer? A least favourite? Now, I have to tread carefully here. For one thing, as a journalist, I'm expected to be unbiased and objective. And for another, obviously, I need the advertising cash to keep this sorry ship afloat. But I can tell you that there is, I'm not going to name them, they know who they are, but I can tell you that there is one Chinese manufacturer that I would happily see sink beneath the waves. Not because they're Chinese, but just let me just say that if they vanish tomorrow, I would actually do a wee jig around the office. In addition to that, he's not here, but if I were to ask my son Fred the same question, I know precisely who he would say. It would be a company that literally ejected him from their stand at an exhibition because they thought he was a spy. A spy. What? Why are you carrying a camera? Because I'm here as a reporter. I've got a press badge. Yes, get off our stand. You're quite clearly a spy from the competition, they said. Yeah. So what about you? Have you ever been let down by a machine or by customer service so much that you now have a genuine dislike for the brand? That's what we'd like to know. What have we got? Question of the day. Dan Cullen says he's going straight in with Hyundai. Well, you won't like our first film of the day today, then, but he also says he has quite a few. Yeah. It can leave a lasting impression, can't it? It really can. Yeah, I think that's Gary. Now I'm intrigued. Yes, indeed. I'm intrigued as well. Be interested to see what people come up with. And I can tell you now, this is a very geographic thing. I think if I were to air this live in America, lots of people would probably say British brands. And I think if we did it in China, they'd say lots of American brands and so on down the line. But if you've got a least favorite construction equipment manufacturer, I'd love to hear about it. Now, there is our mystery machine. And straight away, Jim Turner reckons it could be a Volvo or 140. It is not. Dan can bring himself to type the name. It's not a Hyundai HX 950. I'll tell you now, it is not a Volvo, and it is not a Hyundai of any shape or form. Completely different manufacturer. Mick has just joined us. Good morning, Mick. Morning all. The Hound and me had a scare earlier. Coach full of kids crashed on the bin near me. Thankfully, no injuries. Bloody hell. That's no way to start your Friday, but good to hear there's no injuries. Keep us posted on that one, Mick, if you would. Let me show you a bit more of the mystery machine. There you are. Again, I will repeat and reiterate the colour of the machine. Don't be fooled by it. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with what it actually looks like. As this electro over hydraulic lever control killed them and reducing engine pump size. I think that's relating back to Hyundai and Dan's slight disdain for the Hyundai brand. Hey, listen, we're all entitled to our opinion, and everyone's are as valid as the others. And I will state, for anybody that is potentially advertising out there, these are the views of our viewers, and I may or may not share them. I don't suppose anybody's going to be bothered by that, but you need to get these things in. Anyway, news time. I've already said we had no news yesterday, loads of news today, and it looks like this. England's local road network has been slammed as a national embarrassment in a recent report. The survey highlights a growing crisis with potholes, crumbling infrastructure, and inadequate maintenance. Experts warn that the poor state of the roads is not only a safety hazard, but also a drag on the economy, affecting businesses and commuters alike. The local government association is calling for increased funding and long-term investment to address the backlog of repairs, estimated to require billions of pounds. Hire bosses. The construction industry is being warned about a new wave of scams involving fraudsters posing as plant hire company bosses. The scammers have been targeting construction firms with fake rental agreements, convincing victims to transfer funds for equipment that never arrives. The fraudsters use sophisticated methods, including fake websites and cloned emails, to appear legitimate. Industry leaders, including Flannery, are urging companies to be extra cautious, verifying the authenticity of suppliers and contacts before making any payments. Authorities are investigating several cases and are urging victims to report any suspicious activity. In a bid to recover funds for creditors, administrators of the collapsed Henry Construction are pursuing a £10 million payment from the company's directors. The sum is linked to financial transactions made before the company went into administration, which may have been conducted under questionable circumstances. The administrators are working to trace and reclaim assets to mitigate the financial losses suffered by suppliers, subcontractors, and employees. Legal proceedings are underway, and the outcome could significantly impact the final settlements for those owed money by the failed construction firm. And finally, sad news. Tom Carey, the co-founder of the renowned Carey Group, has passed away at the age of 78. Carey was instrumental in establishing the company in 1969, which grew into one of the UK's leading construction and civil engineering firms. Under his leadership, Carey Group became known for its commitment to quality, innovation, and employee welfare. His legacy includes not only the company's impressive portfolio of projects, but also the strong values he instilled within the organisation. Tributes are pouring in from across the industry, with many remembering him as a visionary leader and a compassionate mentor. Yeah, a couple of things I want to pick up on there. Obviously, very, very sad news about Tom Carey, which was obviously on the industry news yesterday. An absolute visionary, and thoughts obviously with his family. But the other one that really struck me was the survey into British roads or English roads, English local roads. Apparently, they are a national embarrassment. How many people did they survey in order to establish that? Because I would have thought one person could have told you that. Yes, our roads are awful. All of them. Jesus, how do they get these things funded? I have no idea. Mick says, when did this happen, Mark? I haven't heard a word from anyone. Are you talking about Tom Carey? I think it happened, I think it was announced yesterday. Not entirely sure when he actually passed, but it was announced yesterday. Going back to the Mystery Machine, we have more guesses. We have Dan is going with the Komatsu PC360. It's not the 210 either. And Chris Ford, it's not the 370X from the mighty JCB. Let me show you a smidge more. There you are. As I say, the colour is there purely to put you off. Purely to put you off. Do not be fooled by it. Dan reckons it could be a Sany SY135. It's not a Sany. It's not a Komatsu. It's not a Volvo, and it's not a JCB. We're starting to narrow it down just a little bit, but keep the guesses coming in if you would be so kind. Right, okay, we've done all of that stuff and nonsense. We're getting into the real part of the real meat of the show now. So break out the knives and forks. Back after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yes, just to highlight our impartiality as a purveyor of news. One of our audience has stated his less than flattering comments about Hyundai, but we're featuring them nonetheless.
I'm Mike Simon, also known on social media as Dirt Perfect. I live here in Derby, Indiana. I've been in the excavating business for right at 17 years. It's grown steadily over the years. We do a little bit of everything from field tile and drainage work for farmers to lake projects for individuals like we're doing here. One of the huge advantages with our setup with the excavator and the haul truck is we can kind of pick and choose what dirt goes where, because that's extremely important to build a structure that will stand the test of time and perform the way they want it to. These haul roads aren't as smooth as the highways. These grounds are rough. These conditions are bad. We're jumping over rocks, ditches, sticks, stumps, everything. You try to move that out of your way, but it's not always feasible. These haul trucks are like little monster trucks. That stuff don't bother it whatsoever. And the conditions you can work in with them versus a conventional road truck is day and night difference. On a project like this, one machine won't do everything. You do need multiple pieces of machinery. The three main machines we use would be the haul truck, an excavator, and a dozer. On this particular project, there's a lot of emphasis on sorting the dirt out. We got different soil types here. So we'll go through and load what dirt we need where in the dam, place it with the haul truck, and then you'll come back with the dozer and actually spread it out to where we can compact in what we call lifts. We like to try to put in anywhere from a foot to 16 inches at a time, and that's where the dozer really becomes key. The dozer is also key in maintaining our haul roads and cleaning up our cuts behind the excavator. Would a bigger haul truck and a bigger excavator be nice for a couple days? Absolutely. But we're going to be here for a couple days and then we're moving to the next project where that stuff's going to be way too big or way too small. This is considered probably a medium-sized project, 12 to 15,000 yards. A big project would be about 30,000 yards. We may move into a job that only move a couple hundred yards. So keeping everything sized for that versatility to where you can still be efficient on a small job and a big job is what I've really kind of tuned over the years and has really paid off huge. So if anybody follows me on social media, they know that I am not brand loyal. I want the machine that does the job the best and is the most comfortable for my crew to run. In a lot of scenarios, that has ended up being Hyundai. I've demoed a lot of their machines over the years, and it's kind of put your money where your mouth is. And 2 years ago, I actually purchased a Hyundai excavator and have not been disappointed with that decision. They surprise me on a daily basis. I buy equipment that does the job I need it to do and is comfortable to run, and Hyundai has fit that bill in a lot of different scenarios.
Building a comfortable tomorrow.
Got to be honest, I've never heard of Dirt Perfect. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but yeah, good film. Fantastic bits of kit. So going back to our mystery machine, which currently looks like this. I know the last guess was from Dan Cullen, who reckons it was a Sani. It's not. He's also gone for LiuGong. He clearly thinks it's Chinese. He's wrong. LiuGong 922F, 926F. It's none of those things. Chris Ford, it's not an Hitachi ZX490-7 either. Not that. It's not that. It's not that. It's not a Caterpillar 336F, and it's not. In fact, it's not a Cat, and it's not a LiuGong either. It's none of those things. Going back to Mick, who let me take that off the screen just very quickly. Mick says, "When did this?" Oh no, we've done that one. He said something else. We're talking about least favourite construction equipment manufacturers, but Mick says, question today, sorry, got to admit, still love my old Haller. Indeed, indeed. And he also says, try to find that JCB7, came across a right-sided HiMac, all on the old school demolition site. I'm going to have to go and have a look at that. That sounds very, very interesting indeed. Let me bring up the mystery machine again, show you a bit more. There you are, bit of cab. Don't know if that helps, but nobody has yet got the right manufacturer even, let alone the model. So keep the guesses rolling in if you would be so kind. LiuGong. When I think of LiuGong, I tend to think of excavators, but they're more than just digging holes. They do stuff on roads as well, as you're about to see. I think he may have been taken in by the colour scheme of our mystery machine. But I'm telling you now, it's not Dan. It's not a LiuGong, and it's not a Shantua. In fact, I'll even narrow it down further. It's not Chinese. It is not Chinese. Mr. Muirhead has just joined us now. Could Gary just arrive and snatch victory from under the noses of those that have been taking part? Morning, Gary. He says, morning, all you beautiful people. Happy Friday, everyone. Yeah, happy Friday to you as well, Gary. Thank you very much indeed. And just, we had a bit of a to and fro last night on WhatsApp. Gary, that letter from your boss, what a class act, eh? What a class act. Wish there were, well, I mean, we've already mentioned the sad demise and untimely demise of Tom Carey of the Carey Group, and obviously your boss going into retirement. Class act, absolute class act. Let's have a look. Hyundai haul truck is it a bastardized Moxie? I think if you trace its history, it probably is. Let me show you just a little bit more of that machine. There you are. Does that help anyone? Don't suppose it does, but keep the guesses coming. Yes, LiuGong. LiuGong on the road. More to LiuGong than meets the eye, right? Now, let's go back to this. I can tell you we still don't have a winner. What have we got? Dan Cullen. I get the impression that today Dan is sat there with a shotgun. It's just loosing off shots in all directions, hoping to hit something. And he still hasn't. He reckons it could be a Develon DX350. It's not. It's not a Hydromec 310. Chris Ford also going with Develon with the 380. It's not. It's not a Hydromec HMK 210 or a 230 or a 500. It's not a Hydromec at all. And it's not a Develon either. There you are. I'm saying nothing. I thought somebody would have got this by now, but apparently not. Maybe the colour has thrown everybody off the scent. What do we got next? Oh, I know what we've got next year. We've got John Deere coming up, but first this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Now, quickly back to the mystery machine. We've got this from Chris Ford, who reckons it could be the Case 370E. It is not. Garvin, over on Instagram, said, is it the Kobelco 370 SR? It's not, but you're in the ballpark. You are in the ballpark. We may actually get a winner on this after all. And Garvin has also said the 380 SR from Kobelco, it's not, but you're getting mighty, mighty close. Hang on, somebody's just added something. Dan Cullen says the Link Belt 250, it's not a Link Belt. Keep the guesses are coming. Yes, John Deere. Let's go and have a look at John Deere and their smart grade system, shall we?
Smart grade is amazing. I get the job done in less than half the time.
Absolutely prefer the smart grade, the integrated controls. We love the bigger screen. The screen is more responsive.
The accuracy level we're looking for is less than a tenth. The smart grade equipment has been able to deliver that for us.
The accuracy of the grade is real precise. Smart grade will never lose its position.
Somebody has snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. I'm going to tell you this. Over on Instagram, Garvin originally said, where is it? What did he say? The Kobelco 370 SR. It's not. He also said the 380 SR. And then he said, or it's the other one. It's not. I can tell you we do have a winner, though. Let me put this up on the screen. Dan Cullen went for the Kobelco 350, it's not. He also went for the 530, it's not. However, Chris Ford says the Kobelco SK500, and he's on the money. He is absolutely on the money, and I can prove it by showing you that's what it really looks like, obviously with the proper color scheme. SK500. I mean, in absolute truth, it is the SK500 XDLC-10. But I don't want to be a pedant about it. Chris Ford, you have another 3 points on the board. And that's 3, which means, where are we? Dan Cullen is in the lead on 9 points. And then myself, Gary Newhead, and Chris Ford are bringing up the rear with 6 points apiece. All going very well. Congratulations, Chris. Well done indeed. Mick says, just spoke to someone, Tom passed away on Tuesday. Was a pleasure working for Scudder's Carey Group. Rest in peace, Tom. Yeah, absolutely rest in peace. And listen, I'm not using this as a political axe to wield or anything like that. But that company was formed in 1969. And he's Tom Carey's principles and everything else still stand the test of time. You know, just an absolute visionary. where are today's visionaries? Do we have any? Do we? I'm not entirely sure we do. Dan Cullen says, Kabelko, he must have beat me by seconds. I think he did. Well done, Chris. He also says, yes, we got that out of the way so we can crack on with the final bit of the show, and then we'll over into my morning monologue. So bit of this, and then we're off to the snowy hills.
Hi, I'm Holly. Join Mark Antley on The Breakfast Show. We are Ovenden.
Yeah, we had a bit of snow in the UK a few days ago. Well, I say I didn't. We didn't see anything where I am. But obviously we've had some snow, which sent me off to find a bit of film of some snow, proper snow, like this.
Südtirol ist schon ein spezielles Land, was Pioniere und Vorreiter betrifft, wenn ich unseren Betrieb sehe, also die Prinoth.
Bugger. I've pulled the wrong film. I don't want to play you a German film. There is an English version of that, and I've brought the wrong one down. My apologies. So I tell you what, I'll go and find that over the weekend, and I'll come back with that because it is time for, well, it's time for the end of the show. So my apologies again, just when it was all going so well. That's about it for the main part of this morning show. It's also it for the week. We are going to be doing a bit of a weekend roundup over on LinkedIn over the weekend. So if you want to go back and look at some of the stuff that we've done over the past week, then please do that. What have we got in the comments here? Guess is still coming in. Dan Cullen, love me a bit of snow and frost. I'll do my best to find the English version of that, Dan, because it's about 3 minutes long and 3 minutes of listening to German. It's quite hard work if you don't speak the language. So I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, then do please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon, ideally Monday. So if I don't see you before, have a good weekend. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I shall return forthwith immediately after this. It's almost 6 years since I took a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Japan. I was there with the European Demolition Association as part of a fact-finding mission. Now, I realise that fact-finding mission is often just a posh way of saying jolly boys outing, but this actually was the real deal. It was designed to expose European demolition contractors to the cultural, procedural and equipment nuances of the Japanese demolition industry, and even my untrained eye was opened. There were the obvious differences, of course, massive attachments designed to tackle huge earthquake-resistant foundations, the fact that many of the machines were driven by women and that they all wore pristine navy blue overalls with high-vis white reflective strips, topped off with hard hats that all featured a chin strap, and they all wore the chin strap too. There were more subtle differences too. I was particularly taken with the widespread use of mini track-mounted cranes to lift dust suppression units to precisely where they were needed. I'd be astounded if any of my fellow delegates on that trip didn't return having seen or learned something new that might be applied to their business here in Europe. And I was reminded of that during a recent trip to the Netherlands, a country where it's just a few miles up the road, but it is light years ahead in its adoption of electric equipment. And it left me wondering, have any UK contractors or plant hirers hopped over to Holland to figure out how our clog-wearing cousins are doing something that we're still debating? 2025 marks the year that Swedish tilt rotator and quick coupler manufacturer Steelrist celebrates its 20th anniversary. That means that those clever Swedes and their Nordic neighbours were embracing tilt rotators and quick couplers about a decade before us Brits. And these are not just isolated examples. Why is it that every self-respecting house-building site on the continent has a small self-erecting crane, while we insist on having multiple telehandlers dashing about the place? Why is it that Americans so love their compact track loaders when you can hardly give them away here in the UK? Why do Brits sneer in derision at compact wheel loaders while our opposite numbers in France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Belgium and the Netherlands all swear by them? Now, in the interest of balance, this isn't one-way traffic. I was roaming the aisles of ConExpo in Las Vegas a few years ago when I was stopped by Ricky Webb of East Coast Demolition. He recognised me because he's an avid reader of demolition news. But he doesn't read it for my good looks or my incisive way with an adjective. He reads it because he admires how British demolition contractors go about their business. However, and here's the thing, reading demolition news, visiting Baumer, ConExpo or Intermat, or taking a trip to the factory of an overseas equipment manufacturer is fine. But they show you how a thing is being done, not why. Those trips, they lack context. Here in the UK, we scratch our collective heads and wonder why our European counterparts are so enamoured with wheeled excavators. Hop over to France, however, and you see them on the road, travelling often at very high speeds between sites, between towns, and between municipalities. Based on that alone, it's easy to understand the Europeans' love of the rubber duck. There's a lesson to be learned here. It's true that the internet has shrunk the world. With just a few mouse clicks, you can quickly see what types of pulverizers are being used on Japanese demolition sites, what type of self-erecting cranes are doing the heavy lifting on a German house building site, why compact track loaders get our American cousins all hot under their blue collars. But the search will show you the what, the where, and the how. But it doesn't, and it cannot show you the why. To understand the why, you need to be there, to see it in person, to understand the nuances and the history, and quite possibly to experience firsthand the shape of things to come. If you'd had the foresight to embrace tilt rotators back when steel wrists first burst onto the scene, you'd probably be a very wealthy person today. But steel wrists, tilt rotators, and quick couplers are not unique. There will be dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of innovations out there in some far-flung land just waiting to be discovered. So against that background, the most valuable piece of equipment you own is maybe not the machine you're sat in. It might just be your passport. Why do I always get an itchy nose when I'm trying to be all serious about stuff? I don't know, but there is my thought. So I'm quite fortunate in the job that I do, in the fact that I get to travel a bit and go and see stuff. And I thoroughly enjoy going to factories and seeing equipment being made, and going to Eskilstuna to see Volvo and up to Utoxeter to see JCB. It's all fantastic. But it does lack that nuance. Why do Americans love their compact track loaders? Why do the Germans so love their self-erecting cranes? Garvin over at Mostly Diggers spends quite a bit of time travelling around the world, actually getting up close to see not just how a machine is being used, but why. And I do think there's a lot to be learned about that. Let's have a look. Nice to see Prinoth Snow Groomers on the show. I've done some work with them in the past too. That's our Gary Major. They do look very sexy machines, which is probably the stamp of Mr. Major. Chris Ford, never had a passport, never needed one. I would say it's worth it. I mean, even just over the channel, the French, we are 26 and a half miles away from Calais. And yet you cross over that little stretch of water and things are different. You see lots and lots of wheeled excavators where we have very few here. You see lots and lots of compact wheel loaders. We have very few here. It is an eye-opener, but I think to understand the whys is to understand the cultural, the historical nuances of what they do. And I think maybe, particularly with the compact wheel loaders, and more specifically, I think with the wheeled excavators, I think it's because we a lot of our equipment tends to be with plant hirers. Plant hirers tend to operate from local depots, so that there'll be one serving Essex and one serving Kent and that kind of thing. Not so much in certainly in France and in the Netherlands. You may have a central hub, but they will then put those machines on the road and they'll just go bombing up not exactly the motorway, but go bombing up the equivalent of an A road to get to the next site. So there's a central hub. They need something that can be transported very, very quickly and ideally on its own without actually having to row in a low loader or something like that. So hence, those are the sort of things that they do, and there's a reason for it. And I wonder if there is some learning to be had from that. Mixers had the misfortune to use a duck on a demo site. There's a good reason why they're not used, not least of which is punctures, I would imagine. Yeah, funnily enough, I was out with, I can't even remember the name of the contractor, and they had a duck on a demolition site. In absolute truth, it was absolutely fine for what it was. It was quite a big site, and the machine wasn't actually doing the demo. It was doing the tidying up. So it was bombing around on what was effectively a former car park, and it was absolutely dandy. But yeah, would you put one in the front line? No, you probably wouldn't. But just going back to my trip to Japan very, very quickly, and I've resurrected this just in case anybody fancies a little bit further reading. I went to this fact-finding mission with the EDA and with Caterpillar. Fantastic time, incredible country, marvelous people, some of the greatest food I've ever eaten, but a real eye-opener. So much so that I was literally making notes and recording audio and stuff like that. And on the flight back, I started to write a book, and I finished it when I got back. It's called The Japanese Way. If you go over to buymeacoffee.com/demolition news, you can buy it. It's £3. It's £3. You'll probably knock it off in a weekend, but if you want to get a bit of an insight onto, just how inspirational that trip was, it's there. And if you can't be bothered to listen, or if you can't be bothered to download that, and if you haven't got £3 kicking about your person, if you go over to your podcast provider of choice and search for Demolition News Radio, and then look for an episode called A Japanese Adventure. I recorded an audio, and I'll tell you now, I was literally recording the audio like this, walking down. I walked down a mountain in Kobe for part of it, and then I jumped on the bullet train. There's bits of me going past Mount Fuji at about 300 miles an hour, recording a podcast. Not many people in the world can say they've done that, but I did. So if you fancy a bit of that one's a freebie. You can listen to that one for nothing at all. But I wonder, just going back to the whole thing about the Netherlands, and obviously I wrote a story about this when I got back from the Netherlands about going Dutch. Holland, I mean, the flight to Holland took about 45 minutes. So it's literally, you can't quite see it from here, but they're pretty close. It's easier for me to get to Amsterdam than it is for me to get to Manchester. Let me put it like that. Not only are they now using electric machines extensively in Holland, and I realise they do have a more of a leaning towards all things sustainability. They had an exhibition. It wasn't a huge exhibition, but they had an exhibition dedicated entirely to electric machines. Not just that, but they had, as part of that, they had companies that were hiring hydrogen-fueled generators to help power your electric machines. It's like they've seen the future and said, we'll have a bit of that, while we in the UK have looked at it and said, future looks a bit scary. Let's hold it off for as long as we can. And all it takes, you can literally jump on a plane or a train or whatever, and you can go and have a look, and you can see exactly what the Dutch are doing. And there's a very real possibility, given all that we said about hydrogen earlier in the week, the fact that it's further off than we're being led to believe, there is every possibility that we will have to, one way or another, embrace electric equipment. And if we are going to do so, go have a look. Go have a look at what the Dutch are doing, because while we're talking about it, they're actually doing it. Cub 1H NGL over on, I think that's the name, over on Instagram. I just like the demolitions. That's all. So do I. That's why I started Demolition News. Exactly the same reason. Trust me, if I had launched the magazine and the website for commercial reasons, I would not have chosen demolition as my subject matter. I would have gone for something far larger and far more lucrative. But demolition, as Mick will no doubt guarantee or back me up on, it gets under your skin. If you see demolition up close a few times, you're kind of hooked. All of which, just one of the things that struck me about Japan, going back to Japan, we've been to Japan, come back to the Netherlands, going back to Japan again. Japan obviously is an island nation, much the same as we are. So they've kind of developed their way of doing things in isolation. And, obviously we have the internet and all those things now. But when you look at, they've obviously, they are the nation that spawned Hitachi, Komatsu, Kobelco, incredible machines. We've also got some incredible attachments. But they've done all of that largely in isolation. They've, with, I wouldn't say no influence from the outside world, but they've created an industry purely for Japan, and then that has spread further afield. what are they doing over there that we're not doing yet? And I would say even more so about China. China, with the boom of in its economy maybe 15, 20 years ago, has come from effectively a clean sheet of paper, and very much so, I think, in the case of China, because of their closed borders and their resistance to outside influence. The Chinese construction equipment market has largely developed on its own. Now, I realise we have the standing joke of Chinese manufacturers taking photographs of Caterpillar and JCB machines and then going away and replicating. I understand all of that, and absolutely fine. But because of the closed nature of that country, they have developed their construction equipment by and large from a blank sheet of paper. And it's interesting, if I were looking for the best quality construction equipment, and let's talk excavators as a starting point, I would, without a moment's hesitation, I would look to Europe. I would look to Liebherr and I would look to Volvo. I absolutely would. If I was looking for the same sort of quality in dozers, I would look to America and Caterpillar. But if I was looking to a country in terms of advanced technology and its ability with electricity and electrical power, I'd be looking to China. I would absolutely be looking to China. And it's a flight away. Now, I admit, if you land yourself in Beijing, armed with a notebook and a camera, you'll probably be arrested, but it's there to be explored. Bauma China, I would imagine, I've never done a Bauma China. I would imagine I would imagine you walk around with your chin on the floor. They've done what? Yeah. Dang, so it's very interesting. It's funny, you can travel further in the world quicker than you can around the UK. Well, going back to our bit about the state of the UK's roads. This has got nothing to do with the bit that I was talking about, but when I was on the Contract Journal and Plant Managers Journal magazine, I was living, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes away from where I'm living now. And if I had to go to Birmingham, I could do it in about an hour and 40 minutes. And I allowed 2 hours, so you could stop off for a pee or a cup of coffee on your way out. And 2 hours would get you to Birmingham without fail. Today, if I'm travelling, and I'm marginally closer to the M25 now, if I'm travelling to the Birmingham now, I will either leave 3 to 3.5 hours, or I will leave the car behind and take the train, because it has become so unpredictable. And it doesn't matter whether I go M40 or M1, guaranteed that somewhere along the way I will be delayed. And yet, like I say, me and Fred popped on over to the Netherlands, setting aside the check-in time, which was only about an hour, but we left here, I think, about 5:30 in the morning, at the airport for 6. Flight took off at about 7. We were on site by about 8:30. 8:30 UK time, 9:30 there. It's up the road. Mixes. When we were world leaders in demo, a lot of our ideas were copied and tweaked. Still in the league table, it was so deep-rooted in their old ways. I have to be honest here, I'm not a great favourite of the way demolition has gone in the last 20 years. There is an entire conversation, I think, to be had there. When they first launched the World Demolition Awards, and I would take a guess at 12, maybe 15 years ago. Now, admittedly, the World Demolition Awards were launched by a UK company, a UK publisher, and no great surprise, a lot of the winners were British companies. Absolutely fine. And I think justifiably so. If you went back 12, maybe 15 years and you looked at the likes of Erith and McGee and DSM and some of the companies that were involved at the time, you look at them and say, yeah, those absolutely, I don't care the fact that those are, it's a British publisher giving awards to British companies. I would say, hand on heart, they absolutely, categorically deserved it. And then over the course of a few years, we started to see the likes of Despe. All of a sudden, the Italians started to make their presence felt in the demolition awards. And then the Australians and the New Zealanders and the Americans. And going back to the point that Mick is making there, I don't believe that it's the fact that we've gone backwards. I think that other nations have taken our lead and run with it and run faster. You know, I mean, if you took the very, very best of, I mean, and I do mean the absolute creme de la creme of UK demolition contractors and compared them with Desplay in Italy, Cardem in France, Priestley in Canada, if you compared them like for like, wall demolition in New Zealand and with McMahon in New Zealand as well, and Liberty in Australia, it's a level playing field now. It used to be a case of the Brits and everyone else. It's that now. They're all on a level playing field. Interesting that Chinese manufacturers are government funded too. It helps. It certainly does help. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Question of date. Hitachi MIDI from 3 ton to 8 ton. Lack of thought put into them for operators. Going back to that. Now, Mike Wolf, stand by your beds from Global. Just take a moment to ingest that. Used to be World Highways. It is now Global Highways. Yes, this is to see off those that believe the earth is flat, no doubt. He says the UK's roads are a national disgrace. He's covered that. We actually covered that at the top of the show. He has done it way better because he knows roads way better than I do. And he's done it, as I say, done it in way more depth. So there is a link there. Go and have a look at Mike's ramblings on the state of the UK roads. And just to add a little spice to this, in addition to being a damn fine journalist, one of the best in the business, I was going to compare myself to him, but he's a way better journalist than I am. One thing I will say here is Mike also brings some added spice to that little story, because not only is he a damn fine journalist, he's a motorcyclist and a cyclist as well. So he is one of the people that is dodging potholes all the live long day. So go and have a read of that. Thank you very much indeed for that, Mike. Mick says, personally speaking, if the demo industry got on the train years ago, the old boys club put the game before profit, we'd be near the top again. Yeah, I think we would. And in my head, this is, and I realise this is a slightly odd way of looking at things, but in my head, there's almost been like a relay race. The National Federation of Demolition Contractors came up with its Articles of Association, which the National Demolition Association in America basically copied word for word. They changed the spelling of a few words because they're American and that's what the Americans do. But by and large, the constitution of the NDA in the States is exactly the same as it is with the NFDC. More recently, the National Federation of Demolition Contractors and a certain bloke called me wrote a set of high reach guidance notes, which have actually been reprinted or extended since I did it. But we did it, and we as me and the NFDC gave that to the European Demolition Association, and the European Demolition Association picked it up and run with it. And as it stands at the moment, I tend to see more coming out of the NDA in the States and the EDA out of Europe than I do out of the NFDC. It's like they've pioneered, they've chopped their way through the undergrowth of bureaucracy. They've put in place guidance notes and constitutions and articles of association and stopped. And the Yanks and the Europeans have gone, thank you very much for that, and we're off. We're off and running. And I was talking to an Australian demolition contractor maybe 2 weeks ago, immediately after the Christmas break. And I was telling him to make contact with Adrian McLean, who is the new head of the Institute of Demolition Engineers. And there was a time when I would have said that an Australian demolition contractor reaching out to a Brit, it would almost be like me going to David Beckham and saying, "Here, Dave, teach me how to do a free kick, would you?" Whereas now, I think they are speaking to each other on a level playing field. Totally. So, yes, Mick, 100%. A lot of companies in the world follow the UK in demo and construction, but now the UK is failing compared to some countries' technology and influence. Influence, I think, is one of the biggest things. And as I say, I do tend to see this from seminars and conferences. we've become very insular, I would say, in the demolition industry. I'm going to the IDE AGM, not the AGM, the spring seminar up in Leeds in about 5 weeks' time, I think it is. And there'll be the great and the good of the UK demolition industry there, and they'll be doing presentations on things that they've done and things they've achieved and all that kind of thing, which is absolutely fine. But you go to the EDA, and by and large, the presentations are done by the French and the Spaniards and the Italians and so on down the line, because they are competing on a level playing field now. And in actual fact, I maybe my finger is a little too closely on the pulse, so I'm aware of what is being done in the UK. But you go and listen to some of the things that the likes of Cardim and Desplay are doing in Europe, and it's literally like, bloody hell, these guys are good. These boys are the real deal. They really are. Dan says, I'm with Mick on this, see it every day. Beg to wonder how some people get out of bed, put shoes on right foot in the morning. The stupidity of some is unbelievable. I don't... What we're talking about here, I do think there is a degree of stupidity and naivety in the industry, but I think it kind of goes full circle, going back to Tom Carey, who we were talking about earlier. You are, as the founder of a company and as the head of a trade association, you are the master of your own destiny. Now, you can choose to be an arsehole, or to be insular, or profit over influence. So you can do all of those things. Or you can do the Tom Carey thing of, let's make it better for everyone. Or you can be like Sid Hunt from the old days of the NFDC. And I'm not for one moment saying Sid Hunt Senior was an angel, far from it. But he had a vision of making the demolition industry better. And for a while it was. Because of that, we don't have that anymore. We really don't. Dan says, unfortunately, as a country, we're not influencing the younger generation into the industry. We're telling them, there's better jobs than construction and demolition. That's why why we don't have enough. Yeah. But again, I think when you look at it, I find this one hard. This is a bitter pill to swallow because of what I do for a living, and obviously what you all do for a living. When I wrote the book, My Dad Does Demolition, myself and my co-author, John Woodward, did a tour of some schools. We went and did readings in schools to, 7, 8, 9-year-olds and stuff. And the book was written to encourage young people to consider a career in demolition. And when you go and see young people and you're telling them about all the big diggers and, this and that and everything else, it's very easy to get caught up in the positives of the industry. If an 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old person, male or female, said to me now, I'm thinking about a job in demolition, what do you reckon? I'd find it really, really difficult to be enthusiastic and honest at the same time. Knowing what we know about the dangers, the hazards, the working conditions, the prejudice, the corruption, knowing all of that, could you look in the eye at a 14 or 15-year-old and say, yes, you must join the demolition industry, for 'tis paved with gold? Could you? I don't think I could. Mick says, over the years, and there has been many, I've watched the game I love change over and over again, not for the best. I'm sorry I'm out of the game, but I'm happy I don't have to put up with all the crap that has come. As for the NFDC, NDTG, they do nothing but take from the boys on the ground and give nothing back except a card that in most circumstances should not be awarded in the way they are. No, I agree. And he is... this is not for me to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, because ultimately, the only thing I have of any real value is integrity, right? Without integrity, I have no voice. So I'm just going to say this, and I'm not saying this to big myself up, because I was not the power behind this. I put it together, but other people influenced it. You go back to the NFDC 10, 12, 15 years ago, and it was training program on this, guidance notes on that, initiatives on this, initiatives on that. Let's make this safer. Let's make that safer. Let's make this better. Let's make that better. Let's do this. Let's do that. I see nothing now. To the point where, just going back to the point I was making about young people, if somebody phoned me up, a non-NFDC member phoned me up now and said, I'm thinking about joining the NFDC, what do you reckon? My answer wouldn't be don't, it would be why? What are you going to get from it? You can go on your summer holidays for a long weekend in a hotel cheaper than using their travel agency, which is called a convention. You could do that. You don't need that kind of umbrella to make you sit down with your fellow demolition contractors. Just give them a ring, meet them for a cup of coffee or a beer down the local pub. You don't need that. What else are they delivering? As far as I can see, not a great deal. Doesn't seem to be much getting better on sites anymore. More emails, more paper, less practical knowledge by those in management. We have surrendered progress in favour of conformity. I really believe that. And even going beyond that, I think you're absolutely right there. More emails, more paper, more bureaucracy. But I think we've also had it beaten out of us to innovate. You dare not step out of line these days because you'll be seen as a rabble-rouser or a troublemaker. Mate, should we try it this way? Oh, don't speak to him. He's trouble. We've always done it this way, and he's trying to do something different. We've basically beaten innovation out of ourselves. What have we got here? Dan says, in the industry, why do they do these surveys? How many people we're short of in the industry, but they don't entice younger or train new people up in the future in demolition and construction? The CITB is absolutely complicit in that. The CITB produce surveys on things like migrant labour and stuff. What the name of your organisation is Construction Industry Training Board. Training Board, underlined in triplicate. Training Board. You're not a survey company. You're not there to reach out to social media influencers. Just do your job. And they don't have the confidence to ask us uneducated types, which is damn shame, as we're the ones who know what we're doing. Yeah. And again, I think that's another area where we've taken a wrong turn. Rather than drawing on the experience of those at the coalface, we've kind of put in a divide. He wears a suit. He's in management. He must know what he's doing. And he wears jeans and rigger boots. He clearly doesn't know what he's doing. Really? Dan says, 100% Mick, they shouldn't be awarded until they're proven competent. It's not all in a book. You have to improvise and use your head. Think about an easier way. 100%. All these new managers go and buy a book they learned in school, and they can't improvise. And isn't that a fundamental skill in demolition and construction? You improvise. You improvise and overcome. Isn't that the Marines, the US Marines? They improvise and overcome? It's something like that. Adapt and overcome, maybe. Mick says, got to say this. Dines? Who is Dines? Just remove the coach. Have to take my hat off to them. Who are Dines? Should I know that? I feel like I should, but I've got to go and have a look. Bear with me. Dines Motor Group. Dines Motor Group. Didn't know Dines were a thing. And apparently they do vehicle recoveries. So fair play to them. I tip my hat to Dines, who up until about 30 seconds ago, I didn't even know existed. But well done to them. And yes, there is Nick verifying what I've just learned. Recovery people. Well, good for them and good for all of you. That's about it. That's an hour and 8 minutes that we're never going to get back. So CP Dines, CP Dunes, or is that Dines? Deep Drainage Company in Essex. I don't think they've got anything to do with this. I really don't. Anyway, that's enough of all of this stuff and nonsense. If you are excuse me, if you do happen to find yourself on LinkedIn this weekend, we're going to be doing a bit of a blast out to say, you know, we've produced all of this fancy stuff over the weekend. Go and take a look at it. So if you fancy a bit of that, you can do that. If you're regular viewers here, don't bother because you've already seen it. Trust me. My phone is ringing and it says it's a suspected scam. So I shan't rush to answer that. But everybody, please go and do your thing. Let's have a look. Hard-earned experience overlooked far too frequently in this game now. I think that's still Gary Major. Thank you for that, Gary. And 100% yes. 100% yes. And what does Dan say? Hang on a minute. Dan says, have a wonderful weekend, guys. Stay safe and be happy. I will do my level best. Jim says, being on site full time really is starting to bore me now. It's just not as good as it used to be. And isn't that sad? Isn't that sad? I mean, the very fact that Jimmy sat here watching this now, obviously he's a believer. He's an advocate for the industry. And it's not as good as it used to be. And if you can take the polish off it for somebody like Jim, who is so passionate about the industry, what does that say about everybody else? Mick says, right now, the police have thinned out and I ain't got to worry about the hounds snarling at them all. Stay safe, fellas. Catch you later. Yes, do indeed stay safe, fellas. Catch you later. Farno Cow Laser Beam, possibly, who's just put a thing up that's got a little American flag. So I'm guessing he's watching from the States or she's watching from the States. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Jim, yes, Jim, seriously, unbelievable. I'm with you on that. How sad. Bloody glad I don't have to put up with the silly times now. Some of us are in this for the long run. I'm just not sure how the long run is going to be. Anyway, people, go have a fantastic weekend, would you? Please look after yourselves. Stay safe. I'll be back with more of the same. Don't forget, if you would like to learn more about my trip to Japan, buymeacoffee.com/demolition news. Failing that, go over to your podcast provider, look for Demolition News Radio, search for an episode called The Japanese Way, or no, Japanese Adventure. That will tell you all you need to know. Jim Turner says the industry is run by accountants that know nothing about the industry. And on that note, everybody, I bid you a fond adieu. Good day.